Yeah.
And oh my God, we're live.
Oh my goodness me, we are live for 2018. Well, hello, world. Welcome to Mastering Music, Mastering Life. I'm Tony Jack the Bear Mance, and thanks for joining us today on our first podcast, where we are going to be talking to music industry professionals about their journey through the industry and life and anything else that may pop up. And I am absolutely so happy to be able to say that I have Katie Underwood finally in the studio after how many attempts, my love?
I think we're up to like half a dozen reschedules.
I think it was about 6, 4 of which were probably yours.
I'll take that.
4, which are yours, and but we're
2 of those I'm going to blame on my family.
Yeah, and
maybe 1 on work.
And I can blame 2 on my family too.
Yeah,
but we're here.
We're here.
How good to see you.
Here in the Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, my dear.
Yeah.
How's it been?
It's been good. New Year's going really well. My focus for this year is all on health and balance.
Yeah.
So I'm back to yoga for the first time in 5 years.
How's
just
that?
doing it, not teaching it. To confuse people.
Yeah.
And yeah, just really enjoying kicking off the year in a healthy way.
Beautiful.
What about you, mate?
Pretty much like you. Starting off I had a pretty rough time towards the end of last year. I think the same week you lost someone close to you.
Yeah, I had 1 week at the end of last year where I went to 2 funerals in the same week, so that was interesting.
Yeah, and I lost my dear old dad, I lost my biological dad in 2006, but this bloke was like, he was like a real dad to me. So losing him was pretty rough. But anyway, going through the start of this year, I had 2 weeks off life, and no phone, no laptop. Got to refresh, replenish, and started thinking about what we're going to do this year. And like yourself, one of the things I realised through last year's podcast, and this was thanks to Tom, my producer, he made an interesting observation. He said, "Hey, you know what? Every time you guys talked about, as in you and me and the guest, talking about mental health, substance abuse, life, shit, relationships, just the stuff that affects our day to day, there seemed to be more engagement and more activity in the chat box. Because my shtick has been and still is about encouraging, inspiring kids to get their foot in the door in the artistic, creative sense. But because of mental health being such a big thing and more attention given to it, I thought, you know what, I think this podcast can also be a great platform to incorporate a little bit more of that and talking about wellness. And so speaking to artists who have been through their own journey, like yourself, who have come through the other side of their own stuff, and also hopefully bring some practical, easy tips, advice, input for people who are watching who first of all, so they don't feel alone, and secondly, maybe we can do some things. So you tick all those boxes. So that's kind of been a summary of what it's been for me at the beginning of the year and where I am now. So it's actually quite beautiful that you're here today. So tell us, for the benefit of those who don't know much about you, really just give everyone just a little bit of an idea of you and how it all began and where you got to, and then we can start chipping away from there.
Okay. So I'll try and give you my professional life story in about 5 minutes.
Go.
So became famous somewhat overnight with a pop group about 20 years ago called Bardo. Very first reality television show in Australia. We were obscenely famous. It was incredibly stressful and intense and good and bad and all of that stuff. Very, very busy. That wheel spun around for about 18 months, and then I left, and then I did some dance music, worked with a band called Disco Montego, and had my full golden period of rock and roll lifestyle and everything that came with that. Busy touring, airports, drinking, partying, airports, radio shows, all that for another few years, and then did all the other usual things that a lot of artists do: get screwed over by your manager at least once, get screwed over by your record company, and lost faith in the industry and started to realise that my love of music did not align with my love of the music business, which was inherently exploitative and soul-crushing in parts. So then I went into therapy for a couple of years to find myself, and I did. So that really helped me to remember who I was when I wasn't on stage.
Yeah.
And so I kind of not rebuilt myself, but just really remembered those things that I loved about myself before I even thought about doing music as a career. So that was really helpful. And then just worked, in ordinary business for a while. Fast forward a few more years, decided that drugs and alcohol were really messing with my life and rehabbed my life. So I went into a rehab facility for about 2 weeks to kind of just kick the last few habits that I couldn't kick on my own. And I was really, really inspired by the men and women that were working with me, the physical therapists, the fitness trainers, the counsellors, kinesiologists, and what have you. And I thought, wow, these people are really inspiring. I want to be that.
Yeah.
So I started sort of digging into what that might look like for me. And I remembered, once again, one of the things that I loved doing as a kid, like I'm talking 9 years old, my mother had showed me a few basic massage skills as a child, and I loved it. And I used to give family members massages around the campfire on our family holidays and stuff. So that penny dropped, and I thought, of course, I'll do massage. So I got my diploma in remedial massage about 8 years ago, did that for a few years, and then long-time friend of mine who'd also been through a hardcore drug rehab journey got inspired to open up his own rehabilitation facility. So as it happens, my first job as a massage therapist was working in drug and alcohol rehab for 4 years.
Wow.
So that gave me another level of experience working with people who were passionate about, turning their lives around and being a part of that. So then fast forward a few more years from there, I was really happy with the massage career, but I thought, no, it's this good, but this is not quite it yet. There's something else coming. So I spent a year meditating and sitting with what that might be, and then came across the modern version of sound healing. So what that entails is basically me holding a meditation space, guided meditation, using a number of different instruments. So I use drums, crystal bowls, Tibetan bowls, chimes, and my voice. And I assist people going through a meditation space, and then also guiding them through toning circles and singing together as a group.
Yeah.
So I've managed to weave together. So I also certified as a meditation teacher to add depth to those workshops. So I was able to combine my love of healing, my talent for music, and my passion for helping as many people as I can access meditation in whatever way works for them.
Yeah.
And I found that, some people can sit in silent meditation and that works for them. Other people love to do Tai Chi, and some people love to do yoga. But for a lot of people like you and I, where music is our life, using sound to help them get into that meditation space is just ticks their box.
Yeah.
So I love working with people in that way and seeing that I can help people access that deep place of peace and love with music.
Yeah.
That's everything, I think.
Yeah.
I probably missed something. And I had children in there somewhere and
somewhere
as well.
One day you woke up and here's some babies.
6.5 years ago I had twin girls.
Yeah.
So they're a huge part of my life, of course.
Because you've been running some meditation workshops recently, and they've all been doing very well. So what would you say you get creative, artistic people coming along with those, or is it a broad range of people that come along to these?
It's a broad, eclectic, diverse range of people. Probably about 70-30 women to men, although I'm getting more and more men coming along and not just being dragged along by their partners but actually coming along to experience the group. Age range is really diverse. I price tickets cheaper for teenagers, so we kind of open the door from age 10 and up to come with their parents, and then it can go upwards to 60, 70 years old. So it's really quite varied. I think everyone comes to meditation in a different way for a different reason.
Yeah.
And some people are interested at 25, and for others they might not think about it until they're 55. So it's really, there's no set kind of type.
Yeah. I think that's what puts some people off, and meditation, people just usually think of the stereotypical monk sitting in the lotus position going for 10 hours a day.
We do though.
Yeah. I'm fine.
Just to warn you, just a little bit.
Yeah. But just sitting there, and I know when I tried that, I don't even know if your mind can actually stay perfectly still. And I think people chase the impossible of keeping still. And so then it was introduced to me that, look, there are various kinds of meditation. It could be walking. It's just focus on breath. Recently, I've just started picking up again on the practice. And I must say I have noticed a difference in only the last 3 weeks that I've been diligent with it, and really 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day.
Yep.
And I do this thing of binaural beats.
Yep.
They're just all over YouTube. It's just plug it in
Yep.
in the morning, and 10 or 15 minutes is not a lot of time to take out
Doesn't
your day,
take much.
particularly at the start of the day.
Yeah.
So, while I'm not some kind of meditative guru or expert, I certainly am pleased I've reconnected with the practice. And so, and I think that's one of those things that people can do in a practical way, whether you're going through, stress or anxiety or depression. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily the panacea, but I certainly think there is something to be said about anyone picking up some kind of meditative practice.
And I think the common misconception is that you're supposed to do it for a set period of time, but one of the best sessions in my early years of learning about meditation, there was this ex-Tibetan monk that came along to the wellness centre I was working at, and so I dropped in on one of these sessions. But, he'd long since abandoned the robes and whatever. He was just dressed normally.
Yeah.
But he had this wealth of experience with meditation, and he ran us through about a half an hour session, but we were only doing 3 minutes at a time. He'd go, okay, I'm going to start the timer on his iPhone, 3 minutes. And we dropped in, and it was just silent meditation, no guide or whatever. And then the little bell would go, and then we'd talk about where we'd gone in that time. And you wouldn't think you could go very far in 3 minutes. Yeah. But in fact, what happened is every time, we did it about 5 times. So every time we dropped in, you'd get more relaxed more quickly. And then some people, believe it or not, even though we were sitting up, actually fell asleep in that very, very short period of 3 minutes. So he really illustrated so clearly to me at that time and to everyone else in the room that it doesn't have to be 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You can even just do 3 minutes, set it to your iPhone, just sit and breathe. And it doesn't have to be more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So, in the workshops that I run, although I take people on a long sound journey where we might be lying still for about 45 minutes, I always start with the short meditation of I try to keep it as close to 10 minutes as I can to really illustrate that point that you don't have to do it for a long time.
Yeah.
And then even when we do the toning, you don't have to be still. You could stand and sway under your favourite tree and just be still.
Yeah.
If you're doing it mindfully and just give your brain a chance to switch off that superhighway of thought that we have all the time where we've got things around us and devices and whatnot.
Yeah. So tell me, when you were going through rehab, what do you think were the biggest takeaways? What did you learn about yourself in respect to substances, partying? What was the takeaway? What was it that was the light bulb moment or the things that made you go, holy shit, I didn't realize that, and made you turn the corner so that you could move on and not just make the change, but actually make something long lasting? And because a lot of people want to change, they can find their little moments of inspiration, they do something, but yet it doesn't actually stick. So was there a moment or was there an epiphany for you during your time?
I don't think there was any sort of set moment, and I think if there was any epiphany to be had, I had it well before going into rehab. So it was.
And what was that?
So it was more. I remember at the time I was living with someone, and we were smoking a lot of pot and drinking a lot, doing both every day. I left my marriage. I was depressed, and I told myself that was all right for a time. And then I had an epiphany one day, and I thought, hang on, what? And I just kind of did a quick scan of my life and thought, I'm not seeing the old friends I used to see, the good ones. I'm not singing anymore. I'm in a job I hate. I'd gone back to banking. And I just thought, what's happened? Where are all the things in my life that I love, and where are the parts of me that I used to respect that I no longer have respect for? And I kind of pulled myself up by the bootstraps mentally and thought, right, this is not on.
Yeah.
I'm not living to my fullest. I'm not where I want to be, and I clearly need to make some changes. But from that moment to when I actually arrived in this, wellness facility for a couple of weeks, it was probably in a period of another 3 months where I had to reduce and then eventually drop things. And
When you say reduce and drop things, reduce the usage?
So reduce drinking, and then I stopped drinking. I reduced the smoking, and surprisingly, I managed to get my smoking down to a certain amount every day, and then I couldn't I physically could not get off it without help, and that was really surprising. Everyone talks about how harmless, marijuana is, and look, power to you if you think that or if it is. But for me, when I tried to stop, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. It was really quite surprising and confronting, and I thought, okay, I need a little help here. So I went to a wellness centre where the backbone of treatment was Chinese therapy, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, personal training, massage, counselling, the whole gamut.
Very holistic.
You're totally holistic,
Yeah.
and coming at you where we had a set program every day. You asked me what the main takeaway was as far as how to sustain it. I guess it really, with any of those programs, it's really about that daily practice and the first thing that you do in the morning, and whether it's meditation or getting up, going for a run, but it's how am I going to start my day?
Right.
Because how I start my day is what sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So, whether it's yoga, whether it's running around the block, whether it's a few sit-ups, whether it's just sitting under your favourite tree out in the backyard or whatever, but taking some time to do something that sets you right for the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that was something that I did a lot of, and then I waned off it, and I've only just recently got back into it. But I think you're right. I think sometimes when people talk about morning routine, and in personal development world, a lot of guys talk about their morning routine, and it seems to be a common practice amongst high performers and whatnot. But the one big thing I've taken away from the whole morning routine thing is that I think the big mistake I made was that I felt it had to be this regimented thing, and that it was stringent. And if you didn't do it at the right time, in the right way, in the right fashion, then it was kind of, you fucked it all up. Now I understand that it doesn't matter if I read or meditate or drink my water or do my breathing or write a blog or whatever. It doesn't really matter, even if I don't get it all done. If I get some of it done, and irrespective of the order, I think for me, if I had to say, there are some non-negotiables. I think the meditation in the morning, at least for me, it really helps more than anything. It just calms me down, sets me straight. I get a chance to think about where I want to go, because unlike people where they try to get stillness, I actually do think, and I visualize, and I just visualize things I want to be doing or places I want to be or situations. So my mind is still active, but it's focusing on what I want.
Yes.
And allowing the binaural beat thing, the technology, to do the work for me in terms of getting me into that theta state or whatever.
Yes. Yep, that's it.
Where I'm in. And the other thing too, I've even had these creative moments during it, which they say that a lot of creativity comes to us in that dream state. And sure enough, some things about my podcast, the event I've got coming up on the 25th, that came to me during them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
These little,
I know exactly what you mean.
Those little kind of things, and things that I heard about from others, which not that I never believed it, but it's different when you hear someone else's experience, and then when you have the same experience, you go, oh, fuck, wow.
Yeah.
So meditation for me, but just having that some consistency, I think, is more.
Sure.
More to it, and we have a lot. I mean, I think the world is in need of wellness, generally speaking.
Of course.
And it's no wonder that we see so much more. I hate to use the word industry, because people in the wellness game, whether it's from a physical, emotional, spiritual, part, I think a lot of people mean well, and they are supplying to a demand, and it is business. I mean, fair enough, it is business, but wow, it's such a growing thing right now, and the world needs it. But our industry, in terms of the artistic, creative thing, because we have a much higher propensity towards anxiety, depression, substance abuse. So the more,
and I think those three things are interlinked. I was thinking on that just the other day. Now I don't tend to do traditional gigs anymore. It's not my bag. My main thing is sound meditation, but I do occasionally do pop performances and band performances, very occasionally, but it does happen. And I got asked to do a gig in Melbourne, which will be coming up in about a month or so. And, the usual emails were exchanged and negotiating price and what time I need to be there and what tracks will I do and all that jazz. And then the question comes through, and what's in your rider? And for those who are outside of the industry don't know what a rider is, the rider is basically how much booze they're going to give you backstage. So I was thinking, and my response to that was, well, I don't really drink, so just a bit of sparkling water, a bit of soda water is fine. And I was thinking that today, just, considering coming in here and having a chat, and thought, how many other professions are there where as you walk into work in the morning or even in the evening and your boss comes up to you and says, hey, mate, what kind of day is it today for you? Do you need a slab? Is it a bottle of vodka day? Like, what do you need to get through your day? And that's real.
Yeah.
That's what happens to every band, DJ outfit I've ever worked in. The first thing you walk in, the promoter says, hey, how you doing? Whatever, can I get you a drink?
Yeah.
You haven't even done anything.
Mm.
And it's this sort of celebration. And it's no wonder that from the outside people look at the music business and go, oh, it's all just a party, because that's kind of this myth that goes on. But from a wellness perspective, I think they're just enabling this alcoholic, drug-addicted culture that people assume, oh, if you're creative, you're allowed to be this, you're allowed to be that. You're allowed to have, 6 beers before you go on stage, because that's just what musicians do.
Yeah.
But why does it have to be that way? And I wondered for a moment, how different the business would be if no musician or singer had a drink before they did a gig, or even while they were on premise.
Yeah.
How different would it be? How less often would we perhaps get screwed over by our managers or record companies because we're more likely to have our wits about us? I don't know.
Well, they're interesting questions to ponder.
There's no fixed answer, but it's, I don't know, it just got me to thinking that, that I can't think of any other profession other than perhaps the hospitality industry, where there's a bit of furry lines around, around drinking and what have you.
Yeah.
But it just struck me as unusual. So, yeah.
But having said that, I'm not necessarily defending the position of the other side.
No.
I have known a lot of people who perform quite admirably. I think it comes down to balance. I mean, I don't know whether complete abstinence from it is but
advocating that.
But certainly, but for a lot of people though, it's hard. It's a cumulative thing, and being a social thing and whatnot, and sometimes a little peer group pressure, expectations. Like you said, it's funny how sometimes people who I know outside the industry who ask me about, and they, I think that even here, it's just sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Now, it's not all that all the time. We're a business, and not to say that those elements haven't been part and haven't woven through in various degrees and forms over the years. I'd be lying if I said that. And I've been known to work under the influence in the past as well, and so I've been through all of that and know my journey through all of that. But I think there are some people though that most people I know are fairly disciplined, are with it.
And look, I think that's where, in the broader context of how it affects people's mental health, if you can have a slab of beer and get on stage and go home and it doesn't affect your life, well, great, no problem. But a lot of the musos that I know struggle with, varying degrees of diagnosable mental health issues, which are then compounded by not only the drug and alcohol element, but then the sheer stress of being a creative person, having to be, self-motivated, where you have to create your next paycheck. It's not just, you've got that set amount coming in. You've got to really drive your whole business in a way that the average 9-to-5er has no idea about. And those sort of stresses are hard enough. Without potentially kind of mixing in these other complications around that stuff. So, there's no set answer. But
I don't think there's a set answer, and I don't think we're ever going to have a world where that is completely eliminated. But no doubt about it, mental
balance, as you said.
Balance, and maybe it's a bit of trial and error with some of those things. But definitely some people I think just need to stop altogether. Yeah. I was talking to a friend last night, same sort of thing. I mean, every time he wanted to try and dabble, it just took him down a darker and darker path, all of that kind of stuff. So, but when it's been habitual for your life, fuck, it's hard.
Oh, it is hard.
It's really fucking hard.
There's no question.
And hard to stay off as well. And I think it also particularly depends on what the drugs are doing for you. I mean, for some people it's to get loose, but I think for most of us, and speaking for myself, escaping pain, trauma, and a way of coping with feelings of loneliness and feelings of inadequacy, lack of self-esteem. So there's a lot of other stuff that drives it. But then I also believe that, and again, I'm not a psychotherapist but I think
You
that
could be with those glasses.
I could be.
Yeah.
But
Just saying.
yeah, I think I've come to a point now where I also believe that while there's certainly medical aspects of it and physiological aspects and neurological aspects to mental health, I also think a lot of it, and I'll speak for myself here, as someone who had chronic anxiety, and now is coping way better with it. Still have my moments, still have to manage it. A lot of it for me came down to, apart from lots of drugs and bad lifestyle and all that sort of stuff, was the story that I was running, my narrative. And that was the story pertaining around wanting my dad's approval and not ever getting my dad's approval. And so therefore I wasn't good enough, I wasn't successful, I wasn't this, I wasn't feeling like a fraud in the music industry as an imposter as well.
This imposter theme happens, doesn't it, to
quite
a few people?
And so so this story that you run, and of course the feelings that are created in your mind, then all of a sudden your body believes all of that stuff, and it just becomes this cycle. And so I think for a lot of us, if we can be, what helped me a lot was getting therapy around it. Particularly late last year, had a lot of good help on it, pertaining to the whole imposter syndrome thing and other things. Reframing the story around what it is you thought it was and what it actually, and it was like challenging those thoughts, like taking those thoughts and putting them on the stand and cross-examining and going, let's just really look into this. Let's ask some real questions. Let's put some logic behind it and test it. Actually test it, not just allow yourself to wallow in the narrative. And so by reframing and creating some separation and rewriting the story, if you will, started to ease my anxiety, ease the meaning I put around it, and therefore less requirement for this, that, and the other. So, for some people that I've talked to about, so no, it's just all bullshit. It's just all chemicals. Or, like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified to talk about it. But for me, I found that revisiting the narrative I was running in my mind helped. So I don't know how you feel about that, or whether you had any kind of story that you had to revisit through your journey.
Look, I think some of the things that come up, because just listening to what you're saying about this concept of a narrative, I think the common mistake that people make, and I've certainly made it from time to time, is believing that every thought that you have in your head is the truth.
Yeah.
Some thinking is helpful. Other thinking is not so, and it depends what kind of day you're having. If you're having the kind of day that goes, fuck, I'm way too much. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not popular enough. I don't have enough money. Those thoughts are not helping you. Those thoughts are basically self-shaming.
Yeah.
And these are the things, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks by Brené Brown, who talks a lot about vulnerability and shame and guilt, and nobody wants to talk about shame,
No.
As soon as you say the word, people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But in fact, what I've found for myself, and I'll speak for myself, a lot of what's been driving my darker aspects in the last just 6 months, where I've kind of been digging in before I go to the next level of, expansion and lightness. To get to that light place, you've got to dig into that shadow stuff. And so for me, I had to revisit my shame triggers, because I wasn't happy with, why aren't I exercising more? Because it's not about I don't have the time or I don't have the ability. There's something that's stopping me.
Yeah.
And digging into shame triggers around image or around money or around motherhood, is a common one. A lot of women will feel shame around, I'm not a good enough mother, I'm not there enough for my kids, or whatever their narrative is. So for me, when I started to dig into what is shame and how does that show up for me in my life, I found that the drivers for drinking or for overeating or for not doing my exercise program started to dissolve. And now, I've been 29 days no alcohol this year, and I intend to continue for another 28 and beyond that, possibly another 28.
What started that off for you?
For me, there's quite a few. The few main reasons I have. So I've had issues with my back, bulging disc last year. So pain management has been a big thing. So I was on and off painkillers last year. So prescription meds, which is no party if anyone's ever known that, and cortisone for inflammation. So my body was just going, this is not working. You know, I was loving my job, loving my family, everything else was great, but was really struggling with my body.
Mhm.
And what I discovered worked for me was that alcohol inflamed the body, made the pain worse, so does red meat, and too much sugar. So I've basically cut all of those things out primarily as a pain management strategy, and it's working.
Yeah, great.
Second to that, obviously, better for my health. I'm more likely to do exercise. I have more patience. I'm less likely to be angry with my kids if I'm healthy. And I also lost a close friend to depression and alcohol, a long time friend who sadly took his own life, and he had been drinking heavily in the month leading up to his death. So that was also in part an inspiration to go, you know what, I'm going to just step up here and kind of lead the way. So for myself, for my kids, and for a number of people that I know, you know, watch me from afar and still pay attention to what I do. You know, I often get people say, oh, I'm inspired by your journey when you're doing this and that. You're talking about meditation or whatever. And, you know, part of my life's mission is to be an inspiration to people in some of these areas. You know, it may not be in all, but in some. And that's my small part that I want to play, you know, in the things that I do.
Yeah. Well, they say the best way to influence is by example. So doing it and putting yourself out there. And I think it takes a lot of courage too to, again, you know, it's hard to, a lot of stuff we're talking about for a lot of people, they're hard topics to broach, you know, with their friends, with others, because again, they feel shame around feeling what they're feeling, their lack of self-worth or their depression or whatever it is that's bringing them down. But I think that the more people that do talk about it, raise awareness to it, and let it be known that it's okay, you know, and it's not okay to feel shit, but it's okay not to feel okay sometimes, and it's okay to be, this is where you're at, and that there's a way out, and there's help, and there are things that are practical you can do, and you don't have to spend $40,000 on a rehab, you know, 6 months, you know, in the hinterlands of Queensland, or, you know, in the jungle taking ayahuasca and all that kind of stuff. Although, have you done any psychedelics?
I have.
Tell me about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
what do you want me to tell you?
Okay. Did you take psychedelics just as a party thing, or did you take them as a consciousness expansion tool?
Oh, look, a bit of both. I've done mushrooms once.
Yeah, how's that?
And it was good. We were it was just myself and a girlfriend. We hired a house out in Red Hills, just years ago now, and some pretty interesting stuff went down. But I'm mostly on psychedelics. I find that in that space, I feel like that space is closer to the truth than even our reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the fact that you can see and experience energy moving in a way that the average person doesn't normally have access to. So there's a part of that where I love that sort of sneak peek to what's really going on out there in the universe. But yeah, I also understand it's not a place I need to go to very often. But yeah. I did it a lot when I was a kid with my sister when we were back in Adelaide.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been many years since I've gotten into that. But I haven't done ayahuasca. I've heard a lot about that, and it's probably the one that I'm interested in because, as opposed to, you know, taking something in a nightclub and just dancing all night, which is fine, but very different to having a ceremonial process around. I want to respectfully ingest something to, you know, perhaps open up a part of myself or a deeper understanding about life or what have you. So I'm curious about that, but it's not exactly, you know, super high on my to-do list for this year, but maybe one day.
Well, I think the important things when it comes to taking any kind of anything like DMT, I haven't done ayahuasca myself.
Right. I was going to ask you.
I'm hoping that this year, I would like to go down that path just because I'd like to experience it. I have a curiosity just to sort of see what comes up now, particularly from where I'm at this stage of life.
And what would you hope to get from it, do you think?
I think the intention for me would be to go in there with you know, am I on course really with where I'm at? And I guess just to a curiosity just as to what'll come up for me.
I tell you what I can suggest.
Go on.
In the meantime, rather than ayahuasca. So this is something that I was introduced to by a good friend, Anthony, who I'm still friends with, who runs holotropic breathwork sessions.
Okay.
Now, the theory behind this is, and it's as a wellness practice, so it's catering for people who've perhaps come out of the party scene but are looking to rehab. But the whole thing is you still want to access that thing that's beyond you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So holotropic breathwork is literally a process of breathing intently and deeply and continuously for a period of about 90 minutes. And what that does is potentially brings on an altered state of consciousness.
Right.
But you're sober.
Okay.
So if you've never done breathwork, holotropic breathwork, check it out, because it can help you access that space of deep understanding, of revelation, but without having to, take a technical hallucinogenic and, trip off into the jungle somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing about...
Have you done it? You tried it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And what came up for you? How was it?
Well, I sort of reconnected with breathwork about 3 years ago, and I did a few sessions. And in this one particular session, this was before I'd realised I wanted to go into sound healing. And in fact, it was probably, now that I think about it, it was a real tipping point for me. So in the initial phases, it's kind of like you're doing this deep breathing stuff, and often people can like purge, not throw up, but cough and stuff, because you're doing this deep breathing. But for me, after a while, I would naturally go into this long, deep toning thing, right? Spontaneous toning. And you move around. You'd love it because you don't have to be still. You can get up, you can move, and there's all like this full-on deep tribal music happening, and it's quite intense. And anyway, throughout this breathwork session, I found my whole, now those who are interested in chakras would say my fifth chakra basically just exploded. So I would throw my head back. And have you seen The Fifth Element, the movie?
No.
Far out. All right. For those people who have seen The Fifth Element, there's a scene in this where the main heroine of the movie basically opens up her head and shoots out this sort of power energy out into the universe and blows up this alien threat that's about to hit the planet. It's like the pinnacle point of the whole movie.
Right.
So this was me in this breathwork session going, except I wasn't killing any aliens. I was just doing this really, really open, full-on toning. So having this amazing musical catharsis. Anyway, the session ends, and one of the other participants, there was about 10 people, she goes, I just wanted to come up and ask you, do you run vocal workshops? And I said, I don't. I said, but that's a really good idea. And so then one of the other facilitators, who was also friends with Mel, we got to talking, and we're like, hey, maybe we should do something. And so we're like, talk. Yeah. And so that's kind of where it started. Anyway, we were living miles apart, and so we didn't end up doing events together. But that kind of started my inquiry into maybe this is my, this is what's next for me. This is my path. Yeah. And then started studying sound healing, and the rest is magic. So, that was a huge thing for me to get out of a breathwork session. And it was a massive, massive insight, physically and emotionally, and the whole bit.
Well, a lot of practices talk about breath and the prana and how important it is, and just it's big. I mean, even just all of us is how we normally breathe. Most of us breathe pretty shallow and not into our diaphragm, which that means we don't get our enough oxygen, and our blood being cleansed and all that kind of stuff. And I find it amazing, when I remember to do it in the morning, just to do one breathing thing is just counting of. So of a ratio of 1. So breathing in for a count of 1, holding for a count of 4, and then exhaling for a count of 2. That ratio. So you could have whatever numbers you want. And also it seems to me that breathing, there seems to be a preference for breathing through the nose, because through the nose the oxygen stream actually hits your brain more, as opposed. Although Wim Hof, who is a breath master, and has been in ice baths for you can stay in an ice bath for like 3 years straight and alter this. Well, no, I know.
It can be done. I'm not laughing because I don't believe you. I'm amazed by these people.
But to quote him, and I won't try and do his accent, but he just said, "Get it down the hole." So as far as he's concerned, he doesn't care whether you get it down, you breathe in your mouth.
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, but I understand.
You understand, so it doesn't give a shit.
Just breathe any way you can.
Just breathe any way you can. Get the oxygen in there. Yeah. In any way you can, and job's done, son.
Yeah.
But
Classic.
but no, there is a lot of emphasis on breath work, and we're not again. But even when in the mindfulness state, again, what they talk about, the simplest thing is just be aware of your breath.
Yeah.
Just and nothing else, and even that in itself
That can be enough.
is a meditation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Diet's a big one too, isn't it?
Yes, what we put in our bodies, even food is so important. I think sugar is like the worst drug there is, really.
Refined sugar.
Any sort of refined sugars. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but it's the hard thing about again, if you think about in the context of musicians who tour, who are up nocturnal, there's not a lot of options available. I mean, it's hard, but I guess in that case, one good thing is someone said to me, "Oh, what's good to eat?" And a previous mentor of mine said, uses the principle of compared to what.
Mm.
So no matter what you're thinking, it's like, well, it's always about, well, is it this or is it that?
Yeah.
And that's,
is it a meat pie or a pasty?
You know what I mean? Yeah. Or is it a?
Oh, that's got vegetables in it.
That'll
be better.
I mean, people even say, "Oh, don't eat those muesli bars because lots of sugar." But if it's between that and a greasy kebab, then that might, you know what I mean? It's the lesser of two evils. So, and sometimes we can get a little bit too caught up. And while it's important to be healthy and think about what food you're eating and all that kind of stuff, sometimes the anxiety around what you eat, and again, there's been studies, for example, where people who have been pretty lax, shall we say, but just gave zero fucks about what they did, no guilt, just completely at ease and okay with it, had pretty good health as compared to your super hardcore elite athlete type people that will spin the fuck out over the one little thing wrong in the salad dressing.
You've called it out right there. They had no guilt.
Yeah.
And guilt, I work with energies around chakras, and for some people who do or maybe don't know a little bit about this, for each of the chakra centers, they have a positive side and then what we call a shadow side. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, your base chakra is all about security and abundance and whatever, but the shadow side is fear. Mm. In the second chakra, it's guilt. In the third chakra, it's shame. Mm-hmm. So I think it comes back to the whole thing. It's not what you do, but how you do it. If you can eat a donut and go, I fucking love that donut. That was the best donut I've ever had. Mm-hmm. I feel joy and happiness around eating that.
And fuck it, I'll have another.
Is a very different, and your body, regardless of the content of that food, I believe, your body will then process that food and go, with yum, and expel what is not longer needed, and you go from there. Whereas another person who goes, I'm going to have that donut. Oh shit! Now I feel terrible. I'm a horrible person. I've broken my diet. Da da da. This negative program starts running, all because this little thing in their hand that they could have enjoyed but didn't. Then your body goes, oh, this stuff is toxic. Oh shit! We better react. We better trigger inflammation. This stuff is not good. Yeah. And the body responds. The physical body responds to the mental reaction we have to whatever's happening in our lives, whether it's based around food or relationships or what we're doing for a job or whatever. You know, it's not what you do, it's how you're doing it, how you're responding to what's going on around you. You know, someone who's a cleaner for a living, they might love it. Yeah. I love my job. Yeah. Really happy. Same different person, same job. Might go, oh, this is a fucking waste of my time. And, you look at the happiness there. Is it about what they do? No, it isn't. No. It's about how they process that choice, and therefore then how that rolls out in their body and their mental and physical health.
Well, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. I remember a while ago online seeing a story about this gentleman who his job, from the time of the school until his retirement, was working in France. So he was basically the keeper of the men's lavatory. Yeah. And this guy, and he came to work in a uniform, and it was all very spiffy. It was a, nice establishment. And this guy's job was to just keep the lavatory absolutely immaculate. Yeah. And this guy took so much pride in, at the end of the day, he cleaned shit houses. But the way he framed it, but he saw it as a service. He said, look, I'm providing a facility that people can come and enjoy, and and it doesn't smell, and it's nice.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people think it's hard to kind of think about the lavatory as a place you want to just really look forward to going to every day, But he seriously took on that thing, and he greeted people, and he used to get tips, and so he did all the dirty work, but he was just so proud of the fact that he kept this men's lavatory absolutely pristine, so that every time someone walked in, it was just it was just absolutely mint.
Yeah.
And people loved him, and he became, quite well known, and he retired. So it's not me,
That's it.
but hey, but again, just the point of what you're saying about, what's your attitude? How do you frame it?
That's it.
And how do you see yourself within that space? And not many people can do that. That takes an incredible amount of mental,
Well, I think, as you said, if people find that they're running a narrative that isn't helpful and that is reductive, not expansive, then sometimes you do need to go and, go to counselling or see a therapist or talk to a friend. But particularly, if that sort of inner narrative is driving you mad, is either causing you to have self-shaming talk, or maybe you're overeating, or you're drinking too much, or you're getting angry with people in your life because you're not able to cope with this stuff, that talking to someone who can help you reframe your story. And I think that's the key, because if it's too simplistic to say, oh, just drink less or just eat less donuts. That it doesn't work unless you actually look at what's running underneath in your thoughts that drive you to do those things that are perhaps not good for you in the first place. And then once you rewrite the story, then it's easier. All the other stuff is easy.
Yeah. Have you seen that documentary, Emotion 2.0?
No.
I think that's what it's called. It's called Emotion 2.0.
You haven't seen The Fifth Element, so I'm not even talking to you about movies anymore.
Oh, it's a bit like that now, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
My respect for you was here. When you said you haven't seen that film, what is it, like 20th anniversary we had recently with that film, and now I'm questioning.
Oh, right.
I'm questioning even. I think I've got somewhere to be. Like,
Oh, really? Well, fine. See if I give.
Please post in the comments. Am I wrong? Am I right? Come on.
If I give a.
How many fucks do we want to give about this? Just give me one.
Katie Underwood. I'll tell you what. When it comes to giving fucks in this podcast,
0 fucks. I know.
I don't know about 0. You got to give some.
Is it a totally fuck-free zone in that sense?
As
far as giving fucks goes?
No, because I don't believe.
Give a few, otherwise we
you got to
be
give a few.
talking about this stuff.
If we didn't give some fucks, then I wouldn't be here doing this podcast.
No, we wouldn't be.
You know what I mean?
I give a few.
I think you should. I think it's giving the right fucks. Give the right fucks,
it's
Katie.
The quality of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are you giving a fuck about these days?
Well, I give a fuck about my health and I give a fuck about my kids.
Yeah.
I love my girls.
Yeah.
Look, balance. That's where it is for me. And leading by example.
I think that's the key.
Yeah.
But I think also being consistent. I mean, I went through a bit of a phase last year.
And look, I'm not perfect. I'm still, I'm still working stuff out too.
Well, I think you make a really good point. And last year I went through a phase of, because I was getting mail from people, and people hold you in this regard, which is lovely, and it's very flattering. But for some reason myself, I took on this sense of responsibility that I needed to live up to this expectation, which I knew was bullshit. But nonetheless, I took it on, and it was not very helpful. But I think for people that put themselves out there, and it's not about talking down to people or pontificating, it's just about sharing stuff and being honest enough to be able to talk about your good stuff, your bad stuff, to encourage people that, I'm just as fucked up and fallible as anyone else. It's just that these days I'm more prepared to share for those who want to listen. And I think, thankfully, there are enough people out there that do. And I think that's reflected in, as we said before at the beginning of the podcast, how the wellness and, for lack of a better word, industry is on the increase, and more people are looking for answers and strategies and assistance to, as the world's just getting crazier and crazier, and, mental health and suicide numbers and everything's going up. And again, our industry as a whole, and music, but, visual arts and dancers and painters and sculptors, anybody that wears an artistic creative hat, where there seems to be a greater, predisposition to these kind of things.
Well, I think my first therapist once described it best. I found we were talking about emotions, and he said, the way he framed it, he said, you have as a creative person and an outgoing person or what have you, but also a deep thinking person, he said you have a wide emotional variance.
Yes.
And I don't know whether that was a very diplomatic way of telling me that I was crazy fucked up bitch, but I liked wide emotional variance, But in that, he said, a lot of people live in a much more narrow band mentally and emotionally. He said, but your scope is here. You can go from the intense highs when you're feeling very successful and happy with your life, or you're on stage or whatever, to these, sort of post experience lows, or at least I used to, and everything in between. So he said it's a matter of embracing that you are all of those things, and not just the top end. And that all of these things exist, and that this is okay.
Yeah.
And he helped me to sit with the aspects of myself that I had never been comfortable with prior to that, which was, feeling sadness, feeling low, and being okay with that. Like you touched on that before, going, it's okay to feel sad, to feel a bit flat from day to day. If you're feeling that way for weeks on end, well then, perhaps you need to get some help with that. But it's quite normal for anybody to have, a good day, a bad day, a so-so average day, and that this is all part of the normal curve.
Yeah, it is. Well, life anyway it's a wave. Everything's frequency. It's all energy.
Yeah.
So being a wave, there are going to be peaks, there are going to be valleys, and I think for me the challenge is allowing yourself to remain there and just stay and just feel it and just let it wash over you, rather than allow that feeling to strangle you or take hold of you, which a lot of people do, particularly people like myself who still are prone to having anxiety and having those feelings, rather than just go. I guess a good analogy of that is if you get caught in a rip, sort of having the faith to know that the feeling of anxiety will pass if you don't fight it. So being in the rip, it may seem like you're going away and you may go out to sea and drown, but what they say, just relax and just go with it, and just the natural flow of the ocean will bring you back to shore. Yeah. But how many people actually in that moment have the presence of mind and awareness? So the more self-awareness we can have in those moments, the better we can negotiate those peaks and troughs.
I remember there was a period in my life where, and I've been fortunate, I haven't experienced anxiety very often in my life, but I tend to find it will come in pockets of time for me. And there was this one period in my life, pre-music industry, pre all of that, and my anxiety I would start to feel it come up, and my response would be, I need to do something.
Yeah.
I need to be productive. If I'm productive, if I'm doing things and I can tick things off a to-do list, then I don't have to think about how I felt. Yeah. And I remember this one particular day, I was living in a studio apartment, so there wasn't very many sort of K's to cover. And I remember walking from the kitchen to the lounge, to the laundry, and I'd go, I've got to do the dishes. And I'd start, and I'd go, hang on, no, I've got to do this. And I was buzzing around the house, attempting to do 5 things and getting none of them done, and driving myself insane. So that's how it would sort of manifest for me. And my doctor at the time said, look, what I would recommend is when you start to feel that anxiety come up, he said, rather than trying to do anything, he said, just do one. He said, just stop. Drop what you're doing. He said, you're a musical person. He said, do you have a song that you love that makes you feel calm and happy? And I said, yes, there's I think it was like an Enya song at the time. Yep, every time I hear that song, that makes me feel really good. He said, right. He said, from now on, every time you start to feel that fluttery anxiety feeling start, he said, just drop what you're doing, sit down in front of your stereo and play that song. Yeah. And this was before I'd even really discovered, structured meditation. But that was essentially what he was trying to lead me towards, and this song was about 8 minutes long. And so I would sit there and just surrendering, like you said, to that rip moment. Okay, I'm in the rip, but just sit down and just allow myself to do something, not do nothing, but do something that I enjoy, as indulgent as that felt, but knowing that that would help me come back around from that rip moment much more quickly. And then I could gather myself and go, okay, now I'm not caught in this anxiety ripple, and I can just go back to doing one thing. So that was helpful for me, to just give myself permission to stop and do something calming and joyful.
That's the hard thing for people, allowing themselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for most people whose self-esteem isn't all that great, they almost feel like I'm not worthy of that, I'm not good enough for that, or
well, I'm lazy if I do that. I'm not allowed to.
Always excuse, always a reason why, and you can always justify it.
Yeah.
You can always justify why you can't do it or why you shouldn't do it. But we touched on some good points today, Katie.
Yeah. Are we done already?
I don't know. How are we going for time there, Tom?
It's 7:30.
Oh, wow. We are done.
Well,
could talk the leg off it. What's the leg off a mule?
the leg off a chair.
Leg off a chair?
Talk under wet concrete.
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, you can speak under wet.
I would not want to try that.
No, I certainly wouldn't. That wouldn't be a lot of fun. So listen. There is an album now. I'm gonna run out. I know this is really not a good thing to do. I should have bought this.
I'm just going to fill his space while he's gone.
Because we've got to show people your CD. That
I forgot about that. Well, that was just for you. But...
Yeah, I know you did, but a little bit of gratuitous product placement doesn't hurt. It's not going to be great for the audio people that check it out on audio.
No, well.
Which I think most of the people are.
Someone mentioned it in the comments. So.
Okay. So have we got it here, Tom? Is that good? Yeah. Okay, so that's the CD. Kate Underwood, she's put it out.
So this is meditation music. So for those who love me doing disco or indie rock or dance music or whatever, it's not that.
Forget it.
Sorry. But it is all me. So I was very happy to produce and perform the whole thing. So most of the tracks are purely vocal a cappella, and I do lots of vocal layering. And it's designed musically to induce these deep states of relaxation. So people might listen to it to meditate or just to relax, or even I put it on while I was doing my housework the other day, believe it or not, and it helped me maintain my focus. Had it pumping through all the Sonos speakers in the house, but yeah, my intent with this is to provide music that people can feel happy listening to or feel relaxed, or maybe in those moments like I had where you're going, you know what, my brain is just buzzing around at the moment. Maybe I'll just drop in. I'll just listen to track 4 because that's my favourite.
Yeah.
And for 6 minutes out of their life, that might be enough to just switch that, flick that switch of stress and bring people back down to a state they can breathe again.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. That's
so
it.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get you back later in the year.
Okay.
And I have to make it out to one of your events. So.
Yes. And remember to do. I'm going to message you later about the breathwork sessions. You would.
Yeah.
Love
Okay. But
yes, come along to one of my meditation events.
I'd love to check it out.
I'll even throw you a free ticket now that we're mates.
No.
Even though you haven't seen Fifth Element.
No, it's okay.
I'll still send you a ticket.
Yeah. All right then. Well, all right. Well, you get to watch Emotion 2.0, and I'll watch
Emotion 2.0. All right.
Yeah. And we'll do a little swapsy.
And we'll come back and
we'll test each other out on.
All right.
To see who actually watched it.
Okay.
Beautiful. You're awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was good fun.
Yeah.
Good chat.
And thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for all of you who just a reminder that we have our Mastering Music, Mastering Life Mental Health Summit on the 25th of March at the Croxton Park front room. Now, tickets are you have to go to OzTix, and there's a link on the Mastering Music, Mastering Life website. We're just asking for a gold coin donation, and all the money goes to Support Act. And we're going to have Matt Young. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday, motherfucker. Well done, mate. He'll be on the panel, and Matt does a lot of stuff with Narcotics Anonymous, and he's had a great journey, with it all. We'll have Agent 99, Ramina Carmen. He's a DJ and has been doing a lot of work and study around the whole mental health aspect of things. Guy called Ryan Hassan. Do you know Ryan from the Melbourne Centre of Healing?
No.
Ryan, then former addict, been through the fire, come to the other side. He's helped a fuckload of people with addiction issues and mental health stuff and whatnot. And who's the last guy that's on the panel? We got Matt, Ramina. Oh, Morgan. Morgan. Lee Brown from Acolyte. Beautiful Morgan. Morgsy. Hi, Morgsy. She'll be on the panel too, and Morgsy's also got a lot of great insights into the whole thing as a working artist and dealing day to day. So that's going to be good. So we hope to get a whole bunch of you down there and to come along and be involved in the discussion and the people that are on the panel all have their own individual stories and perspectives on it. So hopefully it'll incite some interesting conversation, debate, and awareness to things, and just bring a whole bunch of people together, just to sort of bring people together to be able to talk about these things and support each other, and people can walk away hopefully with some good tips, which hopefully they've done today with what we've talked about.
I hope so.
So thank you so much again, Katie.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, we are out of here. Thanks again to the Backline Project, and I also want to send a big shout out to the Farnham Boys at the Cave for their ongoing support of our podcast and our upcoming Mental Health Summit. Anyway, I love you fucks. Thank you very much. And as I say, please be nice to each other, but more importantly, be nice to yourselves. All right, we'll see you later.